The sound of his phone alarm shattered the silence at 5:30 a.m. Mark Wilson's eyes snapped open, his heart already racing with the familiar panic that started each day. Another impossible morning, juggling breakfast preparation, getting Emma ready for school, and making it to the office before his 8 a.m. deadline. As he stared at the ceiling, the memory of last night's company event flooded back, how he'd broken down in front of his CEO, revealing the crushing weight of his struggles as a single father. The shame burned through him all over again. He never expected she would use that vulnerability to completely transform his life. If you're feeling that pull to know what happens next, stick around. This story about second chances and finding strength in unexpected places might just be exactly what you need to hear today. If it resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that touch the heart and remind us of what matters most in life. Mark dragged himself out of bed, wincing at the familiar twinge in his lower back, a souvenir from years of carrying both his daughter and the emotional baggage his ex-wife had left behind when she decided family life wasn't for her. 3 years had passed since she walked out, leaving him with their then 4-year-old daughter and a mountain of unanswered questions. The kitchen was still a mess from last night. He hadn't had the energy to clean after returning from the company's annual awards dinner, where he'd received recognition for his work as a senior graphic designer. It should have been a proud moment. Instead, it had ended with him practically having a breakdown in front of Victoria Reeves, the formidable CEO of Horizon Media. "Daddy, I can't find my purple headband." Emma's voice called from upstairs. "Coming, sweetheart." Mark replied, pushing aside thoughts of last night's humiliation to focus on the present crisis. Emma stood in the middle of her room, school uniform half on, with her dark curls, just like his, in complete disarray. "We looked everywhere yesterday, remember? Let's use the blue one today." He gently smoothed her hair back, securing it with the blue band she reluctantly accepted. "But Lily says purple headbands are luckier," Emma pouted, her brown eyes serious. Mark knelt to her level. "You know what? I think the luckiest headband is whichever one you decide is lucky today." After dropping Emma at school, Mark arrived at the sleek downtown office building that housed Horizon Media. His stomach tightened as he badged through security. Would Victoria say something about last night? Would she look at him with that same mixture of pity and discomfort he'd seen in her eyes when he'd lost control? It had started innocently enough. She had approached him after the award presentation, congratulating him on his work for the Thompson account. One thing led to another, and somehow they ended up on the balcony, away from the crowd. Perhaps it was the 2 glasses of champagne, a rare indulgence, or maybe just the genuine interest she seemed to show, but Mark found himself confessing how overwhelmed he felt, how some nights he cried after Emma was asleep, terrified he was failing her. "Mr. Wilson?" The receptionist's voice pulled him back to the present. "Ms. Reeves would like to see you in her office. Right away." The walk to Victoria's corner office felt like a death march. Was he being fired? Had his emotional display violated some unwritten professional code? He couldn't lose this job, Emma's health insurance, their mortgage, everything depended on his position at Horizon. Victoria stood as he entered, her tall figure silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city skyline. At 42, she was only a few years older than Mark, but worlds apart in confidence and power. "Mark, please close the door and have a seat." Her voice was steady, professional, revealing nothing. "About last night," Mark began, desperate to salvage what he could. "I want to apologize for—" "No apologies necessary," she interrupted, her expression softening slightly. "Actually, what you shared made me think. You're one of our most talented designers, consistently exceeding expectations despite what you're managing at home." Mark sat stunned as Victoria outlined her proposal. She wanted to establish a mentoring program for high-potential employees, starting with him. It would involve daily meetings, after hours, since that's when they were both available, to develop his leadership skills and prepare him for a possible promotion to creative director. "I don't understand," Mark finally said. Why me? Victoria leaned forward, her usually guarded expression open. Because talent like yours shouldn't be stifled by circumstances. And because I respect how you've handled your personal challenges without letting them affect your professional output. Until last night, I had no idea what you were dealing with. That first mentoring session was awkward. Mark arrived at 7 p.m., having arranged for Mrs. Patel next door to watch Emma. Victoria had ordered dinner, and they ate at her conference table while discussing his career goals. I haven't really thought beyond surviving each day, he admitted when she asked where he saw himself in 5 years. That's precisely the problem, she replied without judgment. When survival becomes our only goal, we lose sight of what we're surviving for. Over the next few weeks, the evening meetings became a strange highlight in Mark's otherwise exhausting routine. Victoria was a demanding mentor but also unexpectedly generous with her knowledge. She assigned him books on leadership, had him practice presentation skills, and gradually involved him in higher-level projects. One evening, about a month in, Mark arrived to find Victoria looking uncharacteristically tired. Bad day, he ventured, setting down his portfolio. She gave a small laugh. Is it that obvious? Board meetings always drain me. 12 men questioning every decision I make because they still can't quite believe a woman is running this company. It was the first truly personal thing she'd shared, and Mark felt a shift in their dynamic. I can't imagine anyone questioning your decisions for long. You'd be surprised, she said, then added more softly, it gets lonely at the top. As spring turned to summer, their meetings evolved. Sometimes they worked intensely on projects, other times, conversation flowed more personally. Mark learned Victoria had sacrificed relationships for her career, climbing from graphic designer to CEO over 20 years. She learned more about Emma, about the day Mark's wife left, about his dreams of one day having his own agency. You should bring Emma to the office sometime, Victoria suggested one night. We could order pizza, make it fun for her. Mark hesitated. She's been asking where I go every evening. She started calling you Daddy's special friend with the big office. Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her usually serious face. Smart kid. Must take after her father. The first time Emma visited the office was a revelation. Victoria, normally so poised and controlled, got down on her knees to admire Emma's drawings. She gave the little girl a tour, introduced her to the office fish tank, and somehow produced a stash of art supplies that kept Emma happily occupied while they finished their work. Your boss lady is nice, Emma declared on their way home. She doesn't smile with her mouth much, but she smiles with her eyes when she looks at you. Mark brushed off the comment, but found himself thinking about it later that night. Had Victoria's interest in mentoring him evolved into something else? And more troublingly, had his feelings toward her changed as well? Summer brought new complications. Emma's school was closed, and childcare became a constant juggle. After Mark had to cancel 3 evening sessions in 2 weeks, Victoria proposed a solution. What if we move our meetings to your place, she suggested. After Emma's bedtime. That way you don't have to find a sitter. The first time Victoria came to his modest suburban home, Mark was acutely aware of every imperfection, the worn furniture, the crayon marks on the wall he hadn't had time to clean, the general chaos of a home occupied by a single father and a spirited 7-year-old. But Victoria merely kicked off her heels at the door and commented that his place felt like an actual home, unlike her minimalist downtown condo. After putting Emma to bed, they worked at his kitchen table. It felt surreal. The CEO of Horizon Media sitting in his cluttered kitchen, drinking tea from his chipped mugs, occasionally glancing at the refrigerator covered with Emma's artwork. She's talented, Victoria noted, studying a particularly colorful drawing. Creative eye runs in the family. Their work finished earlier than usual that night. An awkward moment followed as they both realized the natural end to their meeting had arrived, but neither seemed ready to conclude the evening. Would you like another tea? Mark offered, desperate to extend their time together. Victoria hesitated, then smiled. Actually, do you have anything stronger? They moved to the living room with glasses of the whiskey Mark kept for rare occasions. Sitting on his couch, the professional veneer between them thinned further. Can I ask you something personal? Mark ventured, emboldened by the whiskey and the intimate setting. Victoria nodded, twirling the amber liquid in her glass. Why didn't you ever have children? You're so natural with Emma. A shadow crossed her face. I always thought there would be time. Build the career first, then the family. But years pass quickly when you're focused on climbing the ladder. It's not too late, Mark said gently. Maybe not biologically, but practically. I work 70-hour weeks. I've seen what you go through as a single parent, and you have half my responsibilities. Mark leaned forward. But you also have resources I don't. And from what I've seen these past months, you make time for what matters to you. The moment hung between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. It's getting late, Victoria finally said, placing her glass down. At the door, she paused. Thank you for tonight, Mark. Not just for the work, but for... She gestured vaguely, this. It's been a long time since I felt this comfortable with someone. Before he could respond, she leaned in and kissed his cheek, so quickly he almost wondered if he'd imagined it. Then she was gone, the taillights of her luxury car disappearing down his quiet street. That night, lying awake, Mark confronted the truth he'd been avoiding. He was falling for Victoria Reeves. His boss. A woman so far out of his league, from a world so different from his, that the very idea was laughable. And yet, there had been moments, glances held too long, casual touches that sent electricity through him, conversations that went deeper than mentorship required. The next morning, reality crashed back as Emma woke with a fever. Mark called into work, explaining he needed to stay home with his sick daughter. To his surprise, Victoria texted personally an hour later. Take all the time you need. Emma comes first. Need anything? By evening, Emma's fever had worsened. Mark was debating whether to take her to the ER when his doorbell rang. Victoria stood there, holding a bag from the pharmacy and a container of soup. I hope you don't mind, she said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I remembered you mentioned not having family nearby to help. That night changed everything. Victoria stayed, helping administer medicine, taking temperatures, keeping Emma entertained with stories when she was awake, and finally sitting with Mark in exhausted silence after Emma fell asleep. You didn't have to do this, Mark said softly. Victoria looked at him, vulnerability clear in her eyes. I wanted to. These past months with you, with both of you, have made me realize how empty my life has become. All success, no substance. Victoria. Please let me finish. I know this crosses every professional boundary. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated. But being here tonight feels more right than sitting alone in my perfect condo, working until midnight. Mark took her hand, a gesture that somehow felt more intimate than a kiss would have. I feel the same way. And it terrifies me. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of redefined boundaries. Their evening meetings continued, but with a new dimension of honesty. They agreed to keep things professional at work while exploring their connection outside office hours. Victoria began spending more time with Mark and Emma, weekend outings to the zoo, movie nights, dinners where they took turns cooking. Emma, with a child's perception, adjusted to Victoria's presence with surprising ease. Are you Daddy's girlfriend now? She asked bluntly one Sunday as they picnicked in the park. Victoria looked to Mark before answering, would that be okay with you if I was? Emma considered this seriously. Will you make Daddy happy? Because sometimes he's sad when he thinks I'm not looking. Mark felt his throat tighten as Victoria answered with equal seriousness, I hope so. He makes me very happy. But their budding relationship wasn't without complications. At work, rumors inevitably began. Mark overheard whispers about favoritism, about him sleeping his way to promotion. Victoria faced subtle questioning from board members about her interest in the creative department. The situation came to a head when Mark was officially nominated for the creative director position. The current director was retiring, and despite Mark's qualifications, the timing alongside his relationship with Victoria created a perception problem. "Maybe I should withdraw," Mark suggested during a tense discussion in Victoria's office, door firmly closed. "Or we should cool things off until after the decision is made." Victoria's expression hardened. "Is that what you want? To put us on hold for appearances?" "Of course not. But I don't want people thinking I didn't earn this position. And I don't want them questioning your judgment." "My judgment has always been questioned, Mark. That's what happens when you're a woman in power. If I started making decisions based on avoiding criticism, I'd never make any decisions at all." They left the conversation unresolved, a rare tension between them. That night, for the first time in months, they didn't meet. Mark put Emma to bed and sat alone, wondering if he'd ruined the best thing that had happened to him in years. His phone buzzed at 10 p.m. with a text from Victoria, "Come outside." She was sitting in her car in his driveway, looking both determined and vulnerable. "I'm not good at this," she said as he slid into the passenger seat. "Relationships. Compromise. I've spent 20 years making unilateral decisions." "I'm not exactly an expert either," Mark replied. "My one adult relationship ended with her leaving a note on the kitchen counter." Victoria took his hand. "Here's what I know. I love my job. I've earned every step of my success. But for the first time, it's not enough. I want this, you, Emma, us, more than I want to avoid criticism. But I need to know you want it too, enough to weather the storm that's coming." Mark thought about all they'd shared over the past 6 months, how she'd seen him at his lowest and most vulnerable that first night, how she'd believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, how naturally she'd fit into his and Emma's life. "I've been surviving for 3 years, he said quietly. "Since you came into my life, I've started living again. Whatever storm comes, we'll face it together." The solution they devised was transparent but difficult. Victoria recused herself from the creative director decision, deferring to the executive committee. Mark would be evaluated solely on his portfolio and performance. And they disclosed their relationship to HR, accepting whatever policy constraints came with it. The following weeks were challenging. Mark faced both subtle and overt skepticism from colleagues. Victoria weathered pointed questions from the board. But they held firm, maintaining professional distance at work while continuing to build their relationship outside it. When the decision finally came, Mark was called to the conference room where the executive committee waited. Victoria was notably absent. "Mr. Wilson," the COO began, "we've reviewed your portfolio, your client feedback, and your leadership of recent projects extensively." Mark held his breath, preparing for disappointment. "The committee has voted unanimously to offer you the creative director position, effective next month." The validation was overwhelming. He had earned this on merit, not connection. When he finally saw Victoria that evening, she was waiting at his house with Emma and a homemade "congratulations" banner. "You knew?" he asked, emotion making his voice rough. "I was informed of the decision after it was made," she confirmed. "I wanted to celebrate properly, as family." That word, family, hung in the air between them. Emma danced around them, excited about the cake Victoria had brought, oblivious to the significant moment unfolding. 6 months later, Mark stood in his backyard, watching as Emma showed Victoria how to properly make a daisy chain. The woman who had once intimidated him with her corporate power was now sitting cross-legged on his lawn, her usually perfect hair slightly mussed, laughing as his daughter placed a crooked flower crown on her head. His phone buzzed with a work email. The Thompson campaign had won a national advertising award under his creative direction. Once, that would have been the highlight of his year. Now it was just another good thing in a life suddenly full of them. Victoria looked up, catching his gaze, and smiled, the real smile that had become more frequent, the one that reached her eyes and softened every sharp edge she presented to the world. She excused herself from Emma's flower lesson and joined him on the patio. "Penny, for your thoughts," she said, slipping her hand into his. "I was just thinking about that company dinner a year ago. How I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my professional life, breaking down in front of you." Victoria leaned against him. "And I was thinking I nearly made the biggest mistake of my personal life by almost not following up with you." "Those private meetings saved me," Mark admitted. "Not just professionally. They saved us both," Victoria replied. "All those late nights talking about strategic planning and career development. When what we were really doing was building something neither of us planned for." Emma ran over, proudly displaying a particularly ambitious daisy chain. "Look what I made. It's for all three of us to wear in the pictures tomorrow." Tomorrow, their wedding day. Small, intimate, with Emma as the self-appointed flower girl and ring security, as she put it. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Mark and Victoria sat on the porch swing, talking about the future. Victoria had restructured her role at Horizon, delegating enough to carve out real personal time. Mark was thriving as creative director, mentoring younger designers the way Victoria had once mentored him. "Do you ever regret it?" Mark asked suddenly. "Getting involved with an emotional mess of a single dad who cried on your balcony?" Victoria turned to face him fully. "That night, when you talked about Emma, about your struggles and fears, it was the most honest moment I'd experienced in years. In a world where everyone shows me only what they think I want to see, you showed me truth. How could I regret finding that?" As the stars appeared above them, Mark reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From broken single dad to confident creative leader. From isolated CEO to loving partner and soon-to-be stepmother. From strangers connected by one vulnerable night to a family built day by day, meeting by meeting, truth by truth. Their story wasn't perfect. There had been obstacles, setbacks, moments of doubt. There would be more challenges ahead. But they had found something many search a lifetime for, the courage to be vulnerable, the strength to change, and the wisdom to recognize that sometimes what seems like our biggest mistake can become our greatest blessing. The greatest lesson Mark had learned wasn't about career advancement or even work-life balance. It was that true strength isn't found in handling everything alone, it's found in the courage to let someone in, to share your burdens and your joys, and to build something together that neither could create alone. As the night deepened around them, Mark knew with certainty that this life, this love, this family they had created, was no mistake at all. It was exactly where they were all meant to be. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that reminds us of what truly matters in life. Sometimes our greatest struggles lead us to our greatest blessings, when we're brave enough to be vulnerable and open to unexpected possibilities.